First, thank you all so much. This has been an incredible, incredible, incredible event. So amazing. And it's just really, I'm sure a lot of you agree, just being around each other is just so exciting. You know, it's the most powerful group of people, and the ones that really see the entire picture without the blocks, that you want to see deeper, you want to see the truth, you see the entire picture, and now you're sharing it. And finally, our time has come, because some people say, you know, it's so hard, especially coming from an ethical part of say, even animal rights or being vegan. It's like, oh, isn't it so hard? It's like, you know, it's so hard, but this is the time we've been waiting for. You know, this has been happening for so long, but at least A, we know about it. You know, 10, 20 years ago, nobody knew about this, and B, that it's happening, and it's hugely very, 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 very fast, and it's all because of you all, so thank you so much. And I just want to also thank the person who is so hugely responsible for putting this on. Crystal, can you just come up here real quick? Crystal is the one who led this. And she's done an incredible job. This has all gone so smoothly. And so thank her. And also all the volunteers. Thank you so much. Some of you are on the... anyone who's wearing the CowCon shirt. And then thanks our panel too, and all the guests. They're incredible guests. So thank them too. And we'll get right to it. And it's funny, Keegan, you know, this was supposed to be 2 days, and it's just such a shame that, you know, Keegan's in the other room, and he's so, I can't say enough about him, but it's funny, he texted me some questions, so he's kind of the panel, so I'm just going to start with a couple of his questions and just start it up. So we can just kind of go one by one and go down the row. What are the challenges we face as activists? Anyone can start.
I think, you know, one of the most important ones is being willing to celebrate our victories and not be so hard on ourselves about the task that's ahead. You know, I think the more I've spoken with people, I see a lot of burnout, a lot of fatigue, a lot of exhaustion and depression, and we need people that are going to be sustained in this movement for a lifetime, not for just a couple of years. So about keeping up those victories and staying involved, staying motivated.
I have one.
There you go.
I think the biggest challenge we're faced with today is realizing we need workhorses and not racehorses. We need to realize that this is a race of endurance. And if we don't approach it with joy, if we don't have joy in what we're doing every day, we're doing the wrong thing. If we're going to win, and we are going to win, the question is, will we win before we destroy the damn planet? And so, you don't have to do everything. Just do what you can do with the joy in your heart and feeling good at the end of the day. I did what I could do.
So a couple quick things. Am I supposed to be using this still, or can I take it off? Okay, great. Yeah, that's fine. And one other thing before I answer that question, Kip, you can't necessarily include Howard or me saying 20 years ago. I mean, maybe 30 years ago we were doing this type of thing, and not too many people were involved. But you know, right in the last 5 to 10 years, especially since Cowspiracy came about, things are going to move faster, better, in the right direction. So I have a little different take on the challenges. And I think it has to do with the last 2 years, maybe 3 years of my involvement. I mean, I've been involved for 42 years now, but the last 2 years, I've seen a different type of challenge. And the challenge is that, and I agree with what they said it so eloquently, very well, but I see the challenge, one significant challenge is that there's a large chasm right now between those that are in an influential position to maintain the status quo, if not worsen it, by going through, I was just talking to Keegan about this, by going through from point A, we need to go from point A to point B in terms of sustainability. Point A is where we are now with a number of things. I mean, with consumption and production and all that, but especially with our food choices and how it affects our sustainability in the environment, and with animal agriculture specifically. So we're at point A right now, where we're consuming indiscriminately. And we need to go to point B, which is complete plant-based systems. Now, the reason that we need to do that is because of the timelines we're on. We're no longer in a position of 2 to 5 years ago where you could have a reasonable argument with somebody that when they get around to it on their own time, whenever they feel empathy from an animal rights standpoint, which maybe never, whenever they want to reduce their statin intake because of their own human health, maybe never. Well, now it's outside of self. And we have a large chasm that separates how we are supposed to get from point A to point B without going through this unnecessary transition through these different food movements that take place, especially the grass-fed movement. So I see that as being the largest challenge that we have, is that there's lack of recognition with those in an influential position to help move the critical mass from point A to point B, because the definition of sustainability dictates that we cannot do this. We cannot get to point B by ourselves. I mean, all of us here can see point B, and we can just hop in and swim there pretty easily by ourselves. But we need to take everybody else on board with us. That's the way that sustainability is in terms of global sustainability. So that's the biggest challenge I see, is that there's a chasm. There's this unnecessary movement through grass-fed operations, and that those of a platform of influence simply are not getting it, and we have these very defined timelines that we have to be aware of. So we have to start looking outside of self. Now, if you don't care about yourself, you don't care about animals, you better care about the next generation and all those species that we share this planet with right now today.
Nice. I'll just do a real quick one. And I feel the biggest challenge, I was mentioning this in my talk, is the challenge amongst ourselves with looking in the mirror. Again, when I was on the path of doing Cowspiracy, was never going to be in it, wanted to collaborate with other people, and never thought could speak in front of people, never thought I could do anything, and it was just kind of like, figuring a way to make a little bit of a difference, and then to really step outside where Keegan's like, you have to be in this, and then just stepping outside, challenging yourself. So the biggest challenge comes from within, and it's the cliche of, you never know what you can do. It's the biggest fear is really to realize how powerful one person can be and a group of just a few people can be. And so the challenge amongst yourself to put yourself out of the box, put yourself out of the vegan box, put yourself in uncomfortable positions. And as Howard said, is not we're going to win. We are winning. We're finally on the winning side. And that is so huge when you're on the winning side, because then it snowballs. So to realize you're on the winning side and congratulate yourself because we're on the winning side finally, and to enjoy it. This is exciting, super exciting, fun time to be in, finally. So I'll just get the next question Keegan brought. Is change going to come from grassroots or top-down government? And it's a really, really brief from
Well, I think I've lived in Washington, D.C. about 15 years, and moving there, I didn't think I could get any more jaded than I already was. And I always try to remind people that what people in power are doing is only going to be a reflection of grassroots movements, that if we want true social change, it has to start with communities, with social movements, with the grassroots, and go upwards. I mean, we can never look to people in power for doing anything besides maintaining that power and maintaining that control. And if we want to build, whether we're talking about corporate influence or political power or the power we have as human beings, I think we need to start from the bottom up. That's the only way change is going to happen.
It's really simple. The politicians have one goal: to be reelected. It's easy for us to figure out. You can tell when a politician is lying. His lips are moving. if you get something from a politician, I guarantee you there's not a cure for it. So this issue must be resolved. There's no two ways about it. We know right here, and there's total agreement, it's never going to happen from the top down. My father told me that the only thing that ever happened from the top down is when you ended up with a horse that peed on something. So we can solve all of the problems that are out there of who's going to do it. Look in the mirror. That's who's going to do it. And it's each and every one of us, each and every day, doing everything that we know how. And it's going to be tough, but we can win. We must win. And it must be us.
Excellent. Yeah, okay, so, all right, so I have another small deviation from that, in the sense that I agree that that the movement will have to, and it is, taking place from the ground up or the bottom up. Okay, you notice I had a few slides about my suggestion about the taxation, which you could term incentivizing, however you want to term it, but my thought is this. And most of you know about the U.S. dietary guidelines and the difficulty that we had getting the environment to be kept in the advisory committee's recommendations this year. I mean, it's the first time in the history of U.S. dietary guidelines that they considered the environment, and all 23 of their esteemed scientists on their advisory committee recommended that the environment be taken into consideration, which meant that, the producers of kale and broccoli weren't in trouble, and the producers of meat, dairy, and fish were. So similar to how the U.S. dietary guidelines were produced before this in prior years, there was heavy lobbying going on behind the scenes, and that so in fact when they were finally published this year in February, there was no mention of the advisory committee as recommendations about the environment being in consideration, because it would have created some damage to the meat and dairy and fishing industries. Well, that being said, there has to be some type of top-down approach, I feel, because of a couple of reasons. I mean, the most important reason is that we need to. Not everybody's going to get on board. I have a neighbor that I can guarantee you is not going to get on board. One of my deer hunting neighbors back home that is upset with what we're doing, and we've had chopped off heads of deers thrown in over our yard, and so I guarantee you they're going to need some type of taxation so anyway, but the point is that even with those recommendations, even with policymakers coming into context or understanding of what they need to do, that will still require a bottom-up approach. So it's a little different twist on what the others have said, but the policy, there has to be policy making, and I'm working with policymakers right now in a few different countries, but they need to hear, because they're exactly right, they need to hear from their constituents that they're not going to put up any longer with excluding the environment. And one last thing is that I didn't have enough time to throw up a couple more slides about, I had Dr. O's predictions, which I feel what's going to happen between now and the year 2050. But it's a series, and I'm not going to tell you all of them, but it's a series of incentivizing taxation until finally producing and consuming meat will be illegal.
When Keegan and I were contemplating of how to put Cowspiracy together, and we were talking about learning about each other, is that my theory is to somehow figure out again, it was being vegan 8 years and like really, really passionate about what can we do to make a difference, what's being done and not. And I felt Grassroots was a huge, the biggest issue of transformation. But then the other one I said is gold roots, and it's gold roots and it's grassroots. And if somehow we can tap into the gold roots, and so that was the big thing of coming up with Cowspiracy, is to get the heads of these organizations, to get them in a difficult conversation that shows them, the truth or the missing truth. And with What the Health too, is that's a goal, is not necessarily it's going to come from the gold roots, but it's it's shaking the tree and not attacking it, but engaging it from both ways. So that's kind of always been the goals from the grassroots and gold roots, and that's kind of our philosophy with these films, is we're engaging in that conversation of who people look up to. So I feel it's a little bit mixture of both.
Kip, can you explain gold roots for everybody?
Gold roots is like the grassroots, and then the gold roots, that top 1%, 2%. And in all organizations, who's leading the environmental movement? The Greenpeace, Sierra Club, these organizations, and then also the government. And if you can tap the USDA, if you can tap into this, the gold roots movement, and kind of shake that up, and things can happen from both sides, I feel that's when you have real transformation.
One more to the gold roots. I think this is important. In case I'm going to add one more factor or one more entity to the gold roots. It's not exactly his definition, but I think in that gold roots definition, in terms of how it could be some other entity to help, would be philanthropists. And all of us can vote with our dollars. All of us can vote with our dollars, no question about that. But I also know that there are many people with some form of money, it's all relative, but that need some direction in terms of, they want to do something. They don't want to leave their legacy as without doing something, putting back something to our environment and to our health. And certainly one of the most important thing they could possibly do is to leave this earth a much better place than when they entered it. And so I think that it's inherent to all of us to not only help with our own decision making and our own dollars in a grassroots effort, but if we can include part of that in influencing that other entity of the other gold roots, that if you're able to do that, and I think that's a whole nother tapping that we can take advantage of, and I think they just need some direction, some education.
And just to add to that, when I mentioned gold roots, a big one is celebrities. That's gold roots. If somehow tapping into celebrities making an influence, the amount of effort spent on one celebrity, say Leonardo DiCaprio watched Cowspiracy, and then look what that did, and that's gold roots I'm talking about, where somehow you can engage in creative clickbait things and engage in a conversation where, now Miley Cyrus is vegan. Those, with its one person, creates so much transformation. And where you have grassroots, it takes a lot, but if you have a few here and there in high position places with celebrities or that's always kind of been the goal. Like, how can we tap into that realm? So that's an idea. Yeah, thank you. What do you all think is the most effective tool for transformation at our disposal? Keegan?
I always try to remind people, like, when I started doing my work, I had my own experiences with the FBI, and I was also seeing people I really cared about going to prison, and I didn't know what the hell to do, and my entire career that emerged from that, the last 15, 20 years, has just been from that feeling of, what the hell do you do? And I made the decision to do what I do now just because I knew I had a background in journalism, I had training in it, I had that career path, I could speak okay, and it's just combining what I could contribute in some small way. And so I think we need to step back away from this idea that there are perfect tactics, because they're not. And we have to have a lot of humility of recognizing we don't know what actually will have the most significant impact, how to reach people in higher places or in celebrity roles. It can be a lot of different angles that can have that influence. So my challenge to you all would be to just take take the time and step back and do kind of an analysis of your skills and your interests and how you can tap in that way. Not what is the most fun or exciting type of activism, but if you have computer programming or design or advertising or you're good at leafleting, or maybe you just have a good day job that pays well and you can donate that money and be a philanthropist. There's a lot of different entry points that we tend to downplay in this movement. So I think we need all of them. Absolutely.
The most important thing is we never know the opportunities that may happen. It's having guts enough to do when you have a chance to do something. Maybe it's at a lunch break. Maybe it's when you're meeting your mother-in-law. Who knows? I would have never in my life ever envisioned myself being on the Oprah show. The thing about it is, when it happens, do you have enough intestinal fortitude to step forward? Are you willing every day to hone your talents? You never know, whether you're writing or viewing, but remember one thing. Each and every one of us is a billboard. People don't listen to what you have to say, but they sure do see what you do. And what you do makes a difference. And live your life as a billboard. Ask yourself, if I died tomorrow, would anybody ever stand up and say that I did something? Well, do what you can do it as well as you can do it as often as you can do it, and remember, if you were successful, the cattleman will sue you.
Oh, what a great point. Yeah, so that's going to be our goal, everybody in this room. We're going to, on your calendar, you want to have the cattleman sue you, and that's true. That's true. Or the fishing industry, or the Dairy Council, right? All of them. Or a combination of all of them. That's great. Yeah, I think, to, weave a thread through what they've already said, there's no question that the power of the individual, but through a collective movement, is the greatest thing that we can possibly do. And you can all can take part in that. An example, that's one of the reasons I mentioned we're going to have an environmental sustainability or environmental ambassador program, so it's going to be at least more centralized through our nonprofit group, Inspire Awareness Now. And so it's going to help sort of focus, in fact, we're going to guide people on how to use the information that I have in my research and a few others that are involved with me through my organization. So you can get involved with a number of different organizations, but in terms of environment movement, that I know that how we can get this from point A to point B, I think that's one step in the right direction. One thing that I wanted to say that will somewhat summarize what my colleagues here have already said, is that through our individual movements, if you have the ability to influence all those around you, and I couldn't echo it any better than what Howard just said, but I do want to say this and bring it back to what Kip said earlier and what the other ones might have said about our political situation, is that at some point in time, in order for policymakers to become elected, they will have to address this issue. And similarly with the conservation groups, Cowspiracy made just a huge opening to actually created a door for conservation groups to now change. And we can do the same thing with policymakers. And so once that happens, it'll reach a point, for instance, just take my water example in California, you better believe that some of the statistics are there on the desk of policymakers. It's just going to take enough of us to create that momentum, enough of the collective will to make them start introducing policies that will take into consideration animal agriculture. There'll be a point in time where they will not get reelected unless they do that, and we are the ones that elect them. So the power is within us.
So I just want to add basically exactly what everyone says. The tool that we have that's right now that we didn't have even a few years ago is we can tap into the collective consciousness. And it's such an incredible time where information can be passed so fast, truth can be passed so fast that tapping into that and then finding your tool. Every single one of you is put on this planet for a purpose. It's a purpose in finding your tool that you have and finding out the tools, looking at yourself honestly that you don't have. And it's when you realize both of those things, and then once you realize that, filling that toolbox with a collective collaboration, and then getting together, and then tapping into the collective consciousness. Because with the internet and the way information can get passed, and a powerful team where you have one of every section of creative, organization skills, physical skills, all these things all in one, and then tapping into that. So collaboration to tap into the collective consciousness that we finally can do now thanks to the internet and social media. And so this is a good one. Keegan's last one. Thanks, Keegan. What does the future look like?
Like I'm taking all the first of the brunt of these here. No, I'm just teasing. I think when we're thinking about, well, particularly with the work I do in government and corporate repression, I think the question shouldn't be how do we escape that. I think the future is, as these movements are growing and as we inevitably become more and more effective, and as everyone's been saying, the pace at which that's happening seems to be accelerating. At the same time, the ecological destruction and crisis is accelerating as well. That backlash is going to be inevitable. So there's going to be bad stuff coming. I mean, I will take that role on the panel here and say that is absolutely inevitable. As social movements grow and as people in power and corporations dig in their heels to defend that power. But how we respond to that is not inevitable. There's nothing inevitable about periods of repression throughout U.S. and world history. And I think we can learn a lot about how previous social movements have responded and in some ways made a lot of mistakes. And I think we can become a lot more effective, a lot more strategic moving forward. And part of that is just recognizing our own power and potential, that ultimately the reason all this stuff is happening and the reason those tactics, in my opinion, will accelerate is because we are incredibly effective with very little money, with very little resources, with very little access to power, and threatening some of the most powerful institutions on the planet. And that's just only going to get more and more important as time goes by.
I think the future is two-faced. Are we going to win? Oh, absolutely. There is no doubt. There's not a fiber of my being that does not believe that we are going to win. The question is, will we win before the planet is destroyed? That's the question. It's the speed that we are successful. There's no doubt you're going to see stuff come down the pipe you just can't believe, because they're going to spend every dollar doing every dirty, rotten thing in the world that they can do to keep their dirty clutches on the control as long as possible. What we have to do is remember that 80% of the American population is brain dead. Really, I'm absolutely serious. 80% of the people out there, their amount of intelligence you could put in a teacup and have room left for the Titanic. We need to be a targeted movement. We have to deal with the people that are thinking. If we're going to win in time, so there's a future for our children and grandchildren, it means that we do not waste our time on Joe Sixpack. Go out and put your time and effort in people that are thinking. Cowspiracy has done a phenomenal thing, is having people see it that never had an idea what they were going to watch. and all of a sudden they saw something that opened their eyes. That's what we need to do. Go and target our work, our effort on those that are thinking, because I guarantee you when 20% of the American population understand what's going on, the 80% will follow. They always have, they always will.
Yeah, well said. The only thing I can add to that is that I think in terms of a real direct answer for the question about what we're going to see in the future is that the timelines, that the direction and the movement for policymakers and for policies to be enacted to help ensure that we preserve our resources correctly and use them correctly in the most efficient way possible is not really right now on the same timeline as what's needed. In other words, if you look at the timelines for climate change as being what they are in terms of what we have to do over the next 2 years, the timelines for freshwater scarcity over the next 14 years. We have 900 million people in the world suffering from hunger right now this year. And in terms of land use inefficiencies, biodiversity, while we're sitting here today, we're losing species of animals. So we're actually not moving as fast as we need to move, obviously, with policies that would be enacted, because we can only do so much sitting here in this room and influencing policymakers. It's an effort. And I couldn't agree more that we need to influence those that I often say we have to educate the educated. But I guess the point being is that it's our duty to move to correct that gap. We have to we have to create a widespread sweeping education through our efforts to our policymakers, because they have to work hand in hand. I mean, we're not the ones that are actually, none of us sitting here, well, some of them might be, but we all are not going to have offices all together throughout the world. And it's also a large international issue. For what we're doing right now, it has to be taken in consideration with the triangulation of Japan and China especially, in terms of and then what they're doing with the fact that they're running out of water and land, and how they're using developing countries in sub-Saharan Africa, et cetera, even in Brazil. So what we have to do, it's our duty to try to spread the word as quickly as possible, and use tools that we have now. I mean, use Cowspiracy, use the tools that we have to increase or to move that critical mass and increase the amount of the people that can actually influence policymakers to try to bridge that gap. But that's what I see in the future, is that we have timelines. And yes, I couldn't agree more that we're going to win, but it's up to us to try to ensure that, rather than allowing it to just move on the course it is right now.
The most powerful things that happened to me is when I found out about the law of attraction. A lot of people know that, and it's some kind of a cliche thing, but when you really embrace that, what you put out in the ethers and what you truly believe that's happening now, and essentially where you realize the future is in the mirror, and it's literally looking in the mirror. And Cowspiracy, you can see this when we were filming Cowspiracy, and then it reminded us of this notion, is that we went down this dark path of destruction, and showing it. And it got really dark, just like in the film, really, really dark. And we're like, we are screwed, we are dead. Why are we even doing this film? What are we doing? And then we, snapped out of kind of like remembering some of these tools I learned. It's like, how about, and then we started thinking, how about maybe there is something happening? Maybe there is something where transformation is happening. All of a sudden we found out, and we felt like we were doing research on this and we never found anything, but also we said, let's really give it our go that this is happening. All of a sudden we found Beyond Meat. All of a sudden we found Hampton Creek was right down the road that we never even seen. It was right in front of our eyes. And then we found, these doctors and especially with What the Health, the same thing, these athletes and this movement and the Bill Gates putting money into it, and that all of a sudden it became the future was so dark and dismal, and nothing's going to happen. It's pointless to. This is happening incredibly fast, and once we found that, our entire future changed. And whether it's happening in reality or not, feel really truly from the tip of my toes, every part of my being, I feel this transformation is happening so incredibly quantumly fast over the next 5 to 10 years. And it's so exciting to realize, and then too, to realize how much power you have. You are the one who creates this future. And when you visualize this future and visualize this incredible transformation that's happening now, it's already here. It's not going to happen. It has already happened. And I call people either pregans or vegans, because everybody already is. Everybody has already evolved to that next level. It's just some people don't realize it yet, but we are already there, and it's a super exciting time to live. So that's a future.
Just a quick thing. I think when we're talking about the future, we got to mention the election at some point. That especially as it's becoming more parallel, and all of a sudden everything's in question again. And with all due respect, I think the reason that's happening is that for a long time, people that are, whether you identify as liberal or progressive or left or whatever, have viewed that 80% as not worthy of talking to. And I'll tell you, man, I think that the reason that people like Trump have gained power is that if we're not talking to them, someone else will. And we're seeing that right now. If we see the rise of, if you don't want to use the F word, of fascism or whatever in the United States, it's because we haven't talked to that 80%. And there are a lot of people out there who want to and are going to take that opportunity, and they're going to do some really dangerous shit with it. So get out of the room and do not talk to that 20%. Talk to the 80%, please, and try to make those inroads, because we can't underestimate them. And you'll be amazed the kind of stuff that happens. I mean, from seeing Conspiracy or people in my gym, they're total meathead Marines that are now into going vegan. I mean, it's just, you'll be astounded what people are willing to do if you just go that extra step and try to meet them where they are.
Let's do one quick one. One word. One word.
Liberation.
Joy.
You could take mine. I think I have too many words. Let's try that. So you got a few hours? Okay. Hope.
Collaboration. Thank you. Now, unless anyone else, if you want to, I just want to, it's 5 minutes, but we're going to go a little bit over. If we can open it up to some questions, we have some time for some questions. And just so as point to someone, and yes, yell out so we don't have to, go ahead, up there, yeah? And also, too, real quick, just because we only have a little bit of time, not a statement or anything, like a question, if you can do a question, if you can do. Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to get some insight, maybe, or recommendation or advice that you can tell us as activists. Like over 80% of resources in social justice movements in the past has gone to infighting. Now, I wanted to see if you guys had experiences or just quick advice to help.
I'll just say real quick on that, because especially coming from the animal rights world, we all know that when you go to animal rights, and it's like, whew, like, are you kidding? We're all doing the same thing. My feeling on that as being an activist is you have to, again, like Will was just saying, you have to come to where that person is. So it's trying to tell someone, hey, you have to listen to Ozzy Osbourne because he's going to tell you the way to do it, or you have to listen to hard rock music. And so activism, especially with animal rights, is DXE, direct action, or this, or politics, or or this. You don't know. Keegan went vegan when he was 13 years old from a guy who was a hardcore punk yelling in his face, this close to his face, screaming in his face, and that's what turned him vegan like that. And then there's other people in a casual way, it takes over time, but you never know what turns people or makes that transformation. So appreciate what everyone does. When some people, I don't like the way they do this, don't do this, you know what? Do something. Do what you do. Do what you're passionate about. Because you don't know if they like classical music or they like hard rock or they like classical or classic rock, whatever. All the ways to do activism as long as you are active.
Yeah, I've had a lot of experiences with the infighting, and personally, or just observing it, and it just absolutely runs you down. And if I can say just one thing about that to everyone, it would be the next time you're tempted to really get pulled into that, whether it's like a Facebook flame war or a one-on-one conversation, is to step back and to examine if that difference that you're debating about, if that really vehement opposition you have is greater than the differences you have with the people who are actually destroying the planet. And I'm not saying that as a blanket to silence disagreements within social movements, but to put them in perspective of what's really at stake. And if we're spending our times cannibalizing each other, which is I think what this movement does. I mean, you may be vegan, but people just tearing each other apart, devote some of that rage to the people who actually deserve it.
Takes two to fight. Just look at it and say, I haven't got time for that bullshit. I got a job to do.
I think that's good. That's an exclamation mark, isn't it? Yeah, I don't know. I think the best way that I can sum that up is that we only have so much. Each of us only have so much time on this planet, and I think that we have to use our resources and our efforts and our energy in yes, as Will said, take a step back, but look at the big picture in terms of where you're trying to go, what you're trying to achieve, and then use your efforts in the most efficient way possible. And it's not with necessarily arguing. It's with providing the right information for people. It's the creating the platform of awareness through empowerment. And you don't know when that person will come back around. Just as Kip said, I don't know how long it took after Keegan said, "Get out of my face," and I'm going to start eating vegan. But it may have taken more than just that one moment. Maybe that later that day thought about it. But so you don't know. It could be. It's going to come on their own time. But use your time and your energy, your resources as efficiently as possible, because you only have so much time, and we only have so much time with this movement. But we can make it happen.
Let's see, Cedral. Yes.
I know that switching to veganism is far more time effective than trying to switch the world to green energy. But what would we have to do to our land, to our planet, to make it able to sustain our population on a plant-based lifestyle?
And do we only have a couple more minutes, so something really...
Let me help out a little bit with that. Okay, because first of all, just knowing the ratios and the inefficiencies, it's really not. It's still not a population issue, and so I think you need to take a better look at that. What you're trying to get out of that question, or whoever's asking you to ask it, or your understanding of it, in the sense that we can only do so much about the population control, and but we can do a great deal about all these inefficiencies that are affecting how our population's consuming and producing. So what we need to do is focus more on, as I mentioned before, what is the quickest way that we can make a change, and in terms of our collective ecological footprint, regardless of the population. I mean, you can do what you need to do with your own population control within your own little sphere, but you can't control the fertility rate of 7, per woman in Nigeria right now. So what we have to do is do as much as possible to reduce our footprint as quickly as possible, and again, with all the resource inefficiencies that are occurring with animal agriculture, that is the only route to go. You can't move in between at all, and so that's the best way to look at it. We don't have to review all the inefficiencies again, but look at it in terms of that rather than trying to decide on what population the Earth can support. The bottom line is we can support the 9.6 billion by the year 2050 very easily if they were all on plant-based diet, but we will not be able to support 9.6 billion past the year 2020 as we're expecting to get to 9.6 billion just because of the effect of climate change if we don't change the way we eat.
And just like one or two more questions. You were for one, Renee. Oh, actually, okay, real quick.
I was wondering what. I know another CowCon is coming, but is there a way to incorporate leaders that are in, like the FFA, other agriculture movements? Is there a way to collaborate with these other entities to bring about a CowCon that is going to accelerate?
You mean collaborate with other organizations for bigger CowCons? Absolutely, that's a goal. This is the first, and you guys are this historical first, but the goal is to have this just exponentially grow bigger and bigger and collaborate. Again, that's the one word is collaboration. So that's what we want, is collaborating. So absolutely, nice. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask about opening up this animal rights movement and climate change to people of color. You guys are all Caucasian. Most of the people here are Caucasian. And it always baffled me because I've been in 25 years. And it just seems like we're not making inroads like in the Mexican American community, African American community, and I just wanted to know if you guys had any success reaching out to the majority of America.
Some of the greatest days I've ever had in my life are Black Baptist Church. And can you make movement in that area? Absolutely. The Hispanics, the blacks, the Asians, everybody loves their families. We're all on the same ship. I mean, this ship has a hole in the bottom, and you don't need a Rhodes Scholar to figure out that they're not going down with everybody else. Can we go there? Should we go there? Absolutely. They will be some of the greatest supporters we ever had. And I'll tell you, if I was going to go to Congress and sort out the ones that you could probably deal with, it would be the Black Caucus. That would be the first place I would start. And, there's no reason in the world. I don't care what color they are, what nation they come from. We're all in the same boat, and we're all going to go down, sink or swim.
Yeah, good point. Let's open this up internationally because we're working right now with a couple different groups in World Hunger projects right now. And I can tell you this much, at least in sub-Saharan Africa, the indigenous people there want nothing more than to have sustainable lifestyles, meaning they want to bring back their 2/3 topsoil that's been lost. They want to increase their many are immunocompromised. They're 33% are HIV. They want to bring back gender equality, and there's this whole multidimensional approach to sustainability. And so at least in that area, and also in various parts of Asia that I've worked, you bet. I can echo what Howard said, but extrapolate it out globally. And there's no question that they want the best for their families and for their future generations. And we have the answer. We just have to, again, move it through those. Like, I'm not Bill Gates, but he is deeply entrenched in how various policies are being made and inroads are being forged in sub-Saharan Africa, and many of them are not right there. He might be doing some things well for some other businesses in the United States, but so we have to move those with a platform of influence too. But of color, yes, there's no question that they would love to be on board with us.
And just, we've actually been, with Cowspiracy, that's been brought up quite a bit, and it was something that we really worked on while making it. And What the Health was a huge focus on that. So we're really excited. Does anyone know Dr. Milton Mills? He's going to be one of he's an African-American doctor who's awesome. He's going to be one of the people's, we do test screenings, and he's one of the favorites. And his analogies, and he has a book that's in the works called Diet by Design, and he talks about soul food and where soul food comes from. It essentially calls it plantation food, and where people are really proud about soul food, and then he talks about where it comes from and what it's doing, and we're very focused on getting this out to beyond just as what you said. That's the one critique that's very valid in Cowspiracy. So really, really focusing on that and What the Health, because it is true.
I would just add, I think we kind of need to reframe that challenge also, that it's not necessarily about moving like our message to those communities, that to me, it's about, we kept hearing about collaboration. I think that's what it is. I mean, how do we build interconnected movements? And in my experience, I think we overlook how that's happened. And the people, there are people who have been trying to do that for a long time. For instance, when the Stop Hunting and Animal Cruelty campaign, which I've written about quite a bit, when those activists were going to prison and there was a lot of grand juries happening, especially in the Bay, there was a great partnership that developed with older members of the Black Panther Party, American Indian Movement, Puerto Rican Independence Movement. And it wasn't, hey, you need to go vegan. It was, we want to learn from you. You guys have been through all of this, and you've been through some really heavy stuff. We want to learn. Now, I think some good examples of that are, I spoke at a Computers, Freedom, and Privacy conference in D.C. And so the keynote speakers were Edward Snowden, live from Russia, me speaking about the animal rights and environmental movements, and then Malkia Saril speaking about Black Lives Matter. And it was, again, this nobody was pushing a specific, trying to recruit. It was more of holy shit, that's what's going on with you? This is what's going on with me. And it was incredible, because we realized everyone is dealing with a lot of the same issues, collaborating in the same way. And it was probably some of the most rewarding encounters I had by coming in that spirit, though, of not converting, not recruiting, but just let's just sit down and talk about this and see what we can do together.
Nice. Awesome.